that climate change is making our summers longer and hotter. So what do you think the state should be doing to mitigate that?
Well, I think those very things. The good news about reducing and improving air quality is that it also helps with climate change. So that's a big piece of that, the emissions piece of it. We're working on expanding our energy sources across the state. We've talked a lot about nuclear energy. That's going to be a big part as we head into the 2030s. Rocky Mountain Power has announced two nuclear plants that they will put in the Carbon County area, and so we'll be working very closely with them. As I don't know if they've announced two nuclear plants, but as they decommission two of their coal-fired plants over time, making sure that we have nuclear there as well. We've been working on a hydrogen project. Unfortunately, we got some news this week that our four-state coalition with New Mexico and Wyoming and Colorado, we were not selected by the administration for a hydrogen hub, but that is not stopping the work. We are moving forward, and we will be working with those four partners. We believe that hydrogen will play will be a major advancement as well in helping us with air quality, cleaner air, and with carbon emissions. So all of those things we need to keep doing and expanding on.
Governor, the cost of expanding I-15 is now projected to be about $4 billion. Given what you just addressed, is that the best use of our funds?
Well, we have to be able to get from one place to another as well, and so I think we can do both of those things. I will also be, and I've been very honest and blunt about this. We can't keep expanding. We know we have to do this project. It matches up with some of the other projects. It's been planned for a long time, but I want to see more mass transit, and I'm hopeful that, as it did in 2002, that an Olympic award can set a mark for us to help us work was going on into OUR for sure. These are obviously new revelations. I don't think that these, to my understanding, and again, I haven't been privy to any information from the prosecuting attorney that was looking into that in Davis County, but I do believe that these are new revelations that have gone into are now part of the public record. There is a lawsuit that has been filed, and so I think yes. I mean, I think that prosecutors would have a duty to investigate. Anytime you have, I don't know how many now, 6, 7, 8 women who have alleged this type of what appears to be criminal behavior, at least on their face, that there should be an investigation. Of course, everyone is presumed innocent until proven otherwise. When it comes to the Attorney General's office, they have the ability, of course, to wall off the Attorney General who has a relationship there. And I would expect that whatever they do, they would make sure that it is done fairly and without any influence from the Attorney General who has that relationship. If that means, and they often do this, if that means having a county prosecutor look into it, that's great. If they, a special, I don't care how it would be done, but I do think it's important to make sure that justice is served.
Governor, in the last few years, you have reaffirmed Utah's willingness to accept refugees from Afghanistan and Ukraine. What is your position on receiving Palestinian refugees from Gaza as Israel conducts military operations there in response to Hamas's brutal terrorist attacks on October 7th?
So we haven't had any conversations about that with the administration. I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm very hopeful that those neighboring countries will, Egypt and others will open their doors and make room for those refugees. Obviously, we care deeply about refugees in this state. We have a history of taking care of refugees. There would need to be an extreme vetting process here to make sure that we are very careful about who comes into our country. That's always critical. We would have to work very closely with the Department of Justice and Homeland Security and others who would have the burden of making sure that people who aren't sympathetic to destroying Israel and Jews are coming into our country. I think that could be very dangerous. But we'll have those conversations if and when the administration makes a decision if they're going to be allowing refugees into the country.
I want to go back to Tim Ballard one other time. Can the Attorney General's office, in your view, given the Attorney General's past association and apparent friendship with Ballard, conduct this investigation if they wall off, the investigation from the Attorney General himself, or must it be? Or must it go further than that?
Well, I think attorneys deal with this all of the time. This is very normal. There's a process. Every attorney general has lots of friends, and every once in a while, their friends get investigated by the attorney general's office. There is a process and a procedure. I don't think it would be fair to malign the ability of dozens, hundreds of attorneys in the AG's office who do this work. But they have to make that determination, and there's a process that they would go through to do that. And I trust we have the Attorney General has hired some just incredible attorneys in his office, and I trust them to make that decision. They will know personally if they're too close to the AG and understand that friendship is too close. I don't know the extent of that friendship, if it's extended beyond just the AG to his leadership team. I think those are conversations that will need to be had. But the Attorney General himself might say that for his own benefit, that it might be worth having somebody outside of the office just to kind of avoid any appearance of impropriety.
Would you be comfortable with it being within the AG's office?
I would be comfortable just because I know those attorneys. I work with them all of the time, and they're incredible professionals. But I understand that there may be a public perception issue that may have to be dealt with there. But I do trust them to make that decision.
And on that note, what are your thoughts about any pending legislation to make the Attorney General appointed?
Well, look, the way this would work, I've weighed in on this before many years ago when I was in the legislature, and we had the investigation into former Attorney General John Swallow. And what I said then and what I say now was it's worth looking at what the other options are out there. Now, I don't have anything to do with that decision. I would not make that decision. It would take a constitutional change, which means, for those that aren't familiar, the legislature would have to pass a bill with a constitutional majority or veto-proof majority. The governor does not get to weigh in on constitutional changes. It's very interesting that way. If the legislature can get a 2/3 majority, then the voters would get to decide that. And so there are lots of different ways to look at this. There are some states where an attorney general is appointed. The question I've always had, and this has nothing to do with our current attorney general. I have a great relationship with Sean. This is not in any way focused on him at all. But when you run for office in the criminal justice system, there is a little bit of a perverse incentive there. It's why we don't. It's why we don't have judges run for office. In lots of states, judges have to get elected, just like governors and mayors and city council members. But we decided that because you're dealing with criminal justice, you need to make sure that there is no undue influence there. And so we have a governor that appoints judges, a Senate who confirms those judges, and then the judges do stand for election. It's a retention election, which is different. You get to say, the public gets to vote, do we want to keep that judge or do we want to get rid of that judge? So that's a way where the public still has a say. We're not taking that away from them. So that's an interesting model, but I haven't made a decision one way or another. Again, it doesn't matter because ultimately the legislature would decide and the people of Utah would decide that. But certainly, again, in the criminal justice area, when somebody has the ability to take away your life, literally, right, to seek the death penalty, to lock you up for a period of time, and you're running for that position. I always think, who are the people that donate to an attorney general's race? Like, everyday citizens vote for or donate to a presidential race. When it comes to fundraising, everyday citizens donate to the mayor, to the governor's race, to city council races. I don't know many everyday citizens who think, yeah, I should donate some money to the Attorney General, right? And so I think it's important to kind of look at those incentives and make sure we're getting the best outcomes. Honestly, I doubt that anything will change. It's really hard to get a constitutional majority, and I doubt the citizens of Utah would want to give up that ability to elect their Attorney General. And so I'm very dubious that just changing to a governor-appointed only Attorney General would ever get a constitutional change. And I don't know that I would support that kind of draconian change either.
Have you spoken with Attorney General Reyes about his relationship with Tim Ballard at all?
I haven't spoken directly with him about that relationship, but I mean, we have talked, and I mean, that relationship is very public. I don't think that he's hidden that relationship. He's talked about it oftentimes in press conferences. He's posted about it on social media, and I'm sure I know this has been very hard for him. What has happened there? He talked openly about he was the person he wanted to run for Senator Romney's seat, and all of these revelations came out afterwards. And so I'm sure this has been very hard for Sean and his family, and we've had a lot of kind of media people and famous people who have talked about how they felt like they were duped, and that's never an easy thing. But Sean's and his family are wonderful people, and I hope he can get through this difficult situation.
Speaking of the U.S. Senate race, do you plan on endorsing current House Speaker Brad Wilson in that race? You've hosted a fundraiser for him.
Yeah.
And do you think it's proper for a governor to get involved in a primary race among members of your own party?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think it's very proper. It happens all the time. I've had the opportunity to work with Brad Wilson. I know Brad as well as just about anybody in this state, and that's why I feel so confident, because I have been able to work with him. I believe he's one of the best speakers we've ever had in this state. The things that he's been able to accomplish. He has the most difficult job, politically speaking, in the state of Utah. It's as you can see in Washington, D.C. right now, when it comes to finding consensus and leading a large group of independently elected people who have very strong ideas and are passionate, and to help navigate that process. I've never seen anybody do it as well as Brad Wilson, and I think that's the kind of leadership that we need in Washington, D.C., and I'm grateful for the leadership that he's provided Utah. I'm really mad at him that he's resigned as Speaker and is running for the U.S. Senate. But I think he would be fantastic. And I don't think most people care about endorsements. I think we definitely overrate them and the impact that they have on people. I don't think the average voter cares what the governor thinks. They'll make those decisions for themselves. But I can speak to what I know, and what I know is that Speaker Wilson is not just a great human being, but an incredible public servant. And if we had 100 Brad Wilsons in the Senate and 435 in the House, our country would be in a much better place.
You had a major disagreement with him regarding the food tax.
Yeah.
And he's still your guy.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that you can disagree with someone and still care about them and still think they're a great leader? Look, my wife and I disagree on lots of things, and we're still together, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah, I would be disappointed if Speaker Wilson and I hadn't had some major disagreements. But I can tell you, and I think you'll see this, those disagreements almost always take place in a respectful way. And not out in the public very often. We try to work through those things ahead of time because I have such an admiration and respect for him, and I think he would reciprocate that.
Governor, about the Speaker's race in D.C., so House Republicans have been unable to unite around anyone to fill that top leadership position for the last 2 weeks. What would the Utah way look like applied to this situation in the House, and what sense of urgency should lawmakers in the House fail to overcome their differences and get to work?
Yeah, well, so the sense of urgency should be driving this. I think there should be an overwhelming sense of urgency. I think it's an embarrassment to our country. It's an embarrassment to my party that they can't seek and find some sort of consensus. The disagree better model of this is what works, and that is that we sit down together, we try to figure out where the obstacles are, what the disagreements are, and then we find a way forward. We look for a third way. Ultimately, that may be how this is solved. A third way that nobody's looking at yet, and that by third way I mean probably a candidate that maybe hasn't even had their name mentioned yet. Someone that where both sides are unhappy, but they realize that because of the pressure, the urgency to actually get something done, we have to move forward. And I'll tell you what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like the 8 people who got us into this mess in the first place without any plan, without working with the other side at all, or any side but themselves, to figure out what it would look like to have leadership there. And that's incredibly frustrating. And we're seeing the real world consequences of that play out. We're now in day, 16 or so, and we're moving on. Also, the way this looks like too is that behind closed doors, the caucus meets, and I served in the legislature, and this is what you do: you come together as a caucus, you have your arguments, you vote, and somebody wins and somebody loses, and then you go out as a caucus and you support the winner. And that didn't happen with Steve Scalise, and I think that's a really important distinction, and again, really disappointing. Yeah, you don't win everything, but your caucus, the party took a position, and they should have had unanimous support once they walked out of there. That's what being a team player is about, and sadly that didn't happen.
There are a couple of issues where questions continue to arise, and these are issues in which the state has been very much involved. Homelessness and criminal justice reform.
Yes.
Do you see a need? Well, first of all, how do you think both of those programs are working?
I think there are some real positives that have happened over the past few years. I think on the criminal justice side, there are some things we've gotten right and some changes that were desperately needed. I do think, though, we have not perfected it, and we need to fix some things. We've been working with CCJJ and other entities, the Board of Pardons and Parole. You'll notice we added a new commissioner to the board. We've also made a change of leadership there with the board now, and that was very, very intentional and I think important. Somebody that has been involved on the public safety side of things, former DPS employee that will take on that role, and I think Scott will be fantastic in that role. And on homelessness, we've done some really important things, but we haven't put it all together yet. And so, Brian, what you will see from me and from my administration, we've been working very closely with Mayor Mendenhall, very closely with Mayor Wilson. We've been working with the courts. We've been working with public safety in the state, with DPS and other entities. We've been working with the business community and the philanthropic community, and with the nonprofit community, service providers, churches as well, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and others. We've been having discussions over the past couple months, and you're going to you will see us taking a much more active role as we head into this legislative session to fill some of those gaps that are still missing. I can give you a couple examples. One of those is unsanctioned camping. Like we have to stop unsanctioned camping in our state and in our capital city. We absolutely have to do that, and so we'll be working very closely with the mayors, again with law enforcement, to make sure that we can do that. We need more services for people who are struggling. We only have 300 state hospital beds, our state mental hospital beds, for those who are suffering the most severe forms of mental illness and addiction. We used to have thousands of those beds, and now we only have 300. And so we know we need to increase that as well. We'll be working with the legislature and legislative leadership on potential policy changes, but we know that there's a lot more to do on that, and you'll see us much more engaged, and there will be more to come on those issues.
Would you call it a major overhaul?
I would call it, I mean, I don't know if a major overhaul is the right term, but it's trying to combine all of the pieces that are out there and filling in those gaps. So we're not changing the direction that we're headed, but it would be certainly additional funding is going to be really important. It's doing what we know works, but doing a lot more of it, I think is the best way to describe that.
For people who would say the state has spent tens of millions of dollars, maybe $100 million or more on this, and we're not better off than we were before. How do you answer?
I would say that they're right in some ways. Now, again, we are a fast-growing state. One of the big problems we've had is the price of housing, right? So it's hard to keep up. If you look at every state in the nation and you look at the price of housing, you can almost guess what their homelessness rate is based on the price of housing. The more expensive housing is, it just makes sense, right? The more expensive housing is, the harder it is, the more people experiencing homelessness you're going to have in your state. So that's another piece of this. On the mental health side, this is another huge piece of this that is so critical. And we're struggling right now with workforce. So we're going to need to overhaul the licensure that we do for mental health in this state, making sure that we get more people in these positions right now. We have bed space at the state hospital, but we can't fill those beds because we don't have enough staff to fill those beds right now. So we're going to be working with our universities and others to make sure that we can get more staffing here. So these are the pieces. What I would say is it's a much more comprehensive approach, taking the money that we're spending now, making sure it's being spent in the right places, and then filling in those gaps that we know exist.
Okay, that is all the time we have for our television broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us for the Governor's Monthly News Conference. And I would like to introduce Ted. He's a Judge Memorial High School student, and he is here for the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. Ted, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Things like good jobs and environmental sustainability factor into what makes states livable. In 10 years, people my age will be starting their careers. What specific policies have you enacted in your time as governor that will make Utah a more livable state in the next 10 years? Yeah,
great question. And at your rate, you might be starting your career a little earlier than 10 years. You're doing well, Ted. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you here. So I had an opportunity to travel around to 29 high schools over the past few months and answer this very question, talk to them about some amazing things that are happening right now. And we tend to focus on all the negativity, the bad things that are happening in the world, and there are certainly many of those to focus on. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a huge believer, and I'm very optimistic. U.S. News and World Report named Utah the best state in the nation to live this past year, looking at over 70 different rankings, ranking all 50 states in those 70 different categories, adding them all together, and Utah came out the best place in the nation to live. And I believe that's going to continue. The opportunities are there. So economically, I think that's important. The ability to get a job in the state is going to be critical. And our economy is growing much faster than the national average. We have thousands of unfilled jobs right now. We need some of you sooner rather than later. There are so many cool opportunities out there right now for the rising generation. When it comes to cleaning up our environment and our air quality, water, sustainability, the things we've just talked about, we've just made record investments to do just that, to make sure that there is water 10 years from now, that the Great Salt Lake hasn't dried up 10 years from now, that our air is cleaner 10 years from now than it's been. And by the way, again, this false notion out there, our air is cleaner today than it's been in like 125 years. And we've cleaned it up. It's 40% cleaner now than it was just 15 years ago. But again, we like to focus on the negative side of that. Now, there's still a lot more to do, but we are headed in a very positive direction, and I think that matters. I will tell you there is one I'm worried about, though, and that is the price of housing. Because if you can't afford a house here, you're not going to be able to live here 10 years from now. And so you will hear me be very passionate about this. I just, with the Utah Economic Opportunity Commission, just this past week, we talked about we've done several things over the past couple of sessions. We have to do more. And I was very blunt in my assessment with our local leaders, with our local mayors and our county commissioners and our local city councils. And that is, every single city in this state has to be part of this solution. They have to figure out a way to increase supply. And there are some cities out there that think, oh yeah, everyone else, we're unique, we're different. No, you're not. You're not unique and you're not different. You have to find more supply, and you have to do it quicker. You have to approve. We're not saying you have to let people build wherever they want, whenever they want, but you have to make the rules easier for people to follow. You have to make decisions quicker, because every day longer it takes adds to the expense of that house. You have to look at the added expenses, the requirements that you're placing on that housing. You must allow houses where we have the infrastructure in place to do that, and we're looking at additional funding streams to help cities with that, to get infrastructure to places where people can build, and we have to have some density in the right areas. That's the only way. That's the only way that our kids and grandkids are going to be able to live here. And so, so that's where we need some help. We need your parents to help. We need your grandparents to help. We need everybody involved in this solution to make sure that we'll take care of the job. We'll make sure that it's sustainable, that this is a place to live. But we need some help when it comes to building more supply of housing.
Okay, we do have Chris Reed joining us remotely with St. George News. Chris, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, and good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Chris.
I want to get back to what you opened with today, which were your initiatives on service. Some businesses might look upon this as something that might create additional red tape if someone's trying to get anything like grants. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would respond to it by saying you should be doing this anyway. Again, every expert will tell you that this is good for business. It makes sure your employees healthier, happier, more loyal. The people that you're serving will reward your business, whatever that is, because they know that you care about your community. By the way, most businesses are doing this, and so it's not hard. And again, you're asking for help. To expand your business or to move your business here, and so I think the least that we can do, if again, and I don't make these decisions, but if the board decides based on the law and the rules in place to grant you that tax break, which is a post-performance tax break, so you have to create the jobs first. The very least that you can do is give something back to the people who made that possible, and that's the citizens of our state. And so I can tell you, we've had, since we talked about this a couple of days ago, we've had zero pushback, and in fact we've had a lot of enthusiasm for what we're doing, not just here, but people in other states are watching and understanding how important service and volunteerism is. By the way, I talk a lot about political polarization, and we know that this is also one of the best ways to help depolarize our country right now. It's hard to hate people when you're serving them and serving together, and people do care about their communities. One of the best things we can do is work to build our communities, and we have that ethos here. This is critical. We've had leaders come from other states. I remember we had the Denver Metro Area Chamber of Commerce here a few years ago, and they were talking about how Utah had really started to grow. We used to be kind of the little brother to Denver. We're not anymore, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. And I talked about this issue and had several of them come up after. I was like, how do you do this? How do you get these titans of business involved in solving problems in your state? Not just philanthropy, not just giving money, but actually serving on boards and work groups to help us find better solutions. I always say, if you want smaller government, you need bigger people, and we have bigger people here. But I worry that businesses who are moving from outside Utah don't understand that that's part of the environment here. That's part of who we are. That's part of what makes Utah so special and so different. And I want to make sure that we preserve preserve that piece. And again, the science is very clear on this. I've talked to brain scientists at UCLA, some of the foremost experts in the country, who tell us the very same thing. When you are serving, when you are volunteering, when you are giving back, there are chemicals that are released in your brain. And those chemicals actually make us happier. They make us more fulfilled. Obviously, we're helping people and solving problems in our state by serving and giving back. But those changes, in fact, more and more therapists are recommending volunteerism and service first before medication, because, again, the science is telling us that it's as powerful as many of the medications, psychotropic drugs and others that are given to help people who are struggling with anxiety or depression. And so it's just a win-win all the way around, and there's bad red tape and good red tape, and I think this is good red tape.
Okay, I believe Chris has a follow-up.
Yeah, just really quick, and I have to play devil's advocate again, but the Utah Social Media Regulation Act, or SMRA, I had to read it out there, that's being proposed by a state department to basically put additional restrictions on where social media companies have to verify children. They have to allow parents access to their children's accounts, those under 18, if I'm correct. Now, playing devil's advocate, some would say that's a restriction on the liberty of businesses, on how they conduct businesses. Certain social media companies got to retool their sites just for Utah, and also on parents to parent their children. How would you respond to that?
Sure. Thanks, Chris, for giving me that opportunity. So I just want to clarify one thing. So this is not a department that is putting these, this new law in place. This was a law that was passed by the legislature and signed into effect by me. It doesn't take effect until March, I think, of this coming year. There will probably be some tweaks during the legislative session, and the feedback is important. So what happened is we passed this law that does require age verification for social media accounts, and then requires these companies to remove some of the most addictive features and harmful features that again, research and data is showing is literally killing our kids. The significant increases in anxiety, depression, and self-harm that we're seeing as a direct result of kids who are spending much more time on social media, and the dangerous content and addictive features that are on social media. Now, what that law did, though, was require this department to implement that law and to put rules in place. So it said, go out and find what are the best technologies, different technologies, figure out how to do this piece that we're requiring you to do. Now, I think this is important. You said that this may be an undue influence on businesses, that it'll make things more difficult for them. Look, there is no other industry in the world where we allow companies to contract with minors to harvest their data. You can't do it. You can't contract with minors, right? And yet, for some reason, we've allowed this to happen. So this isn't something that is unlike things we do in this country. We just don't allow this. I don't know why we've thought it's okay with social media. And so we're also not taking the place of parents at all. In fact, we're empowering parents. That's the very point of this, is to give parents the ability to monitor what is happening with their kids, to monitor what these companies are doing to our kids, and the content that they're providing. And so I think that's a really important distinction. I will also say that we've made this not very onerous at all. All of these technologies, there are a whole bunch of different ways that they can do age verification. They're doing this in other countries right now. Many of these companies already, and claiming like it can't be done here, but they're already doing it. This is very easy. And the fact that it's just Utah will be changing very soon. I can tell you that this is the most bipartisan issue I've worked on in a long, long time. When President Biden came here to the state of Utah, the first thing he wanted to do was talk to me about the bills that we were able to get done, because he wants these done in Congress as well. I have had calls from members of Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, who are very interested in what we're doing and want to do something similarly. So look, if you think we shouldn't have prevented kids from buying cigarettes then you probably won't like this bill. But this is not something new, and it's not that burdensome. It's something that they can do, and we're going to keep pushing forward.
But Governor, under the proposed rules by your Department of Commerce, some of the things that people have to do this requires adults to verify they are who they are to a social media platform through a number of different mechanisms, some of which could include uploading a government ID or a social security number, doing some sort of facial analysis to determine if someone is of age. Are you comfortable with requiring that of every Utahn to do when they might claim this would violate privacy?
Yeah, so a couple things, Ben, that I think are really important. First of all, there are lots of different ways they can do this, and they don't have to choose any of those. And ultimately, that will be between the social media company and the consumer, the customer, to decide which of those that they're going to do. Another thing that's very important is the social media company, they can use third-party, and they already exist. That's the crazy thing. There are third-party verification systems that do this. They're also not allowed to keep this data, right? And so that's very important. Once you get verified, you're verified. They don't keep your data. The government doesn't keep your data. You don't have to let them know. You don't even have to let the social media company know who you are. They don't even need to know that. Again, with a third-party verification that can then delete it, the third-party verification then just tells the social media company that this person is either above age or below age. That's all they need to know, and they're verified. So we have worked in every way possible to make this not onerous, to make sure that they can still do things anonymously. They don't have to they don't have to share that data with the government or with the social media company. And I think those are very important, because I am not comfortable. I am not comfortable with people having to show the government, show the social media company, keep their ID on file, lose their anonymity in a leak that could then show who this person really is posting on social media. Again, we're making this far more difficult than it needs to be, and I know why, and here's why. Because these social media companies are making billions of dollars off of killing our kids. Okay? That's why. That's why they're making up all these arguments like, oh, this is impossible, and the government's trying to destroy, and they're trying to take away your First Amendment rights. They're lying to you. They're lying to you because they are making billions of dollars, which is why we're suing them, and it's why they're going to lose in those lawsuits, and because that's the only way to hit them. We have to hit them where it hurts, just like we did with opioid manufacturers, just like we did with tobacco companies. These are things that we are going to do because we are going to stop the destruction that is happening to our kids, because in Utah we still care about families and we care about our kids.
On that note, TikTok was in court earlier. You've got your lawsuit going. Yeah. They've been ordered to comply with handing over subpoenas to the state and your investigators. But do you anticipate future litigation against other social media platforms, or is it just TikTok?
No, I do. There will be future litigation against other social media platforms. I can't tell you which ones and when, but absolutely you can expect more litigation against these companies, and we will not be the only state that is involved in those lawsuits.
On the age verification, you mentioned, and I know there are several options that companies can choose that don't involve government IDs or social security numbers, but in theory, couldn't all the companies choose to use the government ID or social security number to verify ages? Isn't it possible that we could end up in a situation where everyone has to do that anyway?
Well, they could, and then they would likely lose customers, because I wouldn't sign up for those if they're going to do that. So that again, they're free to certainly make those choices, and then the market would come in, and somebody would say, hey, we're going to make a social media company where you don't have to give any of that, use either of those options, and I suspect that company would be very successful. So again, this isn't hard. We're trying to make it complicated. I know, playing devil's advocate, that's what we do, and it's fun. But this is some of the least controversial stuff we've ever worked on. Over 80% of Utahns are in favor of what we're trying to do to limit kids and social media. The companies know how to do this. They can do it. It's not going to be foolproof, of course. Kids are going to find ways around it. Kids still find ways to smoke, right? But overall, it absolutely will make a difference and an impact.
But what about the criticism from tech industry groups that when someone signs up for these platforms, there's no way of knowing whether they're here in the state or not? So in effect, this would be a nationwide ban, which is not allowed.
Oh, that would be awesome if they decided to do this nationwide. They could do this today. They don't need me to tell them to do this. If they were honest with Americans, if they cared at all about our kids, they would implement this right now. They all have the ability to do it. They absolutely have the ability to do it. But I know the argument. I know the constitutional argument. There are certainly, again, there are ways around it, Brian, but they can absolutely do this based on the state. It happens already. By the way, you guys, in the industry of online gaming, okay, these companies, online gaming companies, are doing this right now. They're doing it right now, and they're doing it state specifically, right? They can tell now. Sure, you can get a VPN and find ways around it. There are always ways around this stuff, but by and large, it's harder to gamble online in Utah than it is in other states where it's legal. It's also very, very hard for minors to gamble in Utah or other states, and so they can do this. They can do this in a constitutional way. Yes, I admit that there are ways around it. We're already seeing it with the pornography stuff, right? They've shut down. Some sites have shut down in Utah, but not other places. So again, a red herring. I keep throwing these at me. This is fun. This is great. Let's keep going. Keep making up ways this can't work when it's really simple. It can work. It exists, and we may have to go to the Supreme Court to prove it.
Governor, going back to homelessness, as winter approaches, Utah County is still without a homelessness shelter. What is the state doing to help support the unsheltered residents in areas like Utah County? And is the state looking at any long-term solutions for homelessness outside of Salt Lake County?
Yeah. So I'll answer the second question first. Yes, we are looking at long-term solutions in lots of different places. You mentioned Provo. Of course, Ogden has some facilities. St. George has some facilities. But this isn't just a Salt Lake City or a Salt Lake County issue, and I'm glad you brought that up. So certainly there have been lots of conversations with providers in Utah County. So the fact that Utah County doesn't have shelter space available right now, that's been the case every year. And so, yeah, that's not going to change this year. But what I can tell you is two things that I think are really important. One is that we are starting our winter shelter program earlier than ever before in our state. So starting this weekend, we will start to open some of those winter beds in Salt Lake County. Again, historically, if you're in Utah County, you can get to Salt Lake County. There are ways to do that. There are providers who can help you get to those beds. Second of all, I think that this is important. We will be opening over 600 beds this year, which is far more than we've ever had before for winter shelter. And we feel that we'll be really close to adequate this year. Again, more than we've ever had, more options than ever before, and we're grateful to everybody who is working with us, service providers and other places, the folks in Sandy who are helping us with some of our most vulnerable population and other places. And so I can tell you for the first time in 10 years since I became lieutenant governor, I feel better about our winter sheltering program this year than I ever have before.
Governor, you've been vocal about your support for Israel following the attacks near Tel Aviv. What is your message to Palestinians who call Utah home?
Yeah, so my message to Palestinians is that our hearts are broken for you as well. This is a deeply difficult and of course divisive issue. I will say I have zero empathy for Hamas at all, and Hamas is bad for Palestinians. Hamas is evil, and I hope that Palestinians everywhere will stand up and speak up and reject what is happening and the evil that Hamas has perpetuated on innocent children, babies, women, men, the elderly population. This incredible atrocity, and we want peace, and we want Palestinians to feel at home in Utah. And as I've said before, any efforts to harm or vandalize, to threaten our Jewish citizens, our Israelis that are here in Utah, will be met with swift justice to the fullest extent of the law. I would say the exact same thing towards our Palestinians. Our Palestinians, they are our neighbors. They are Utah. Utahns, and we love them, and we're grateful they're here, and we extend those same protections to you as well. Again, Utah is an amazing place where refugees from all over the world have made their home here. We welcomed with open arms refugees from Afghanistan who have come here, Muslims who call this home. We watched with joy as our Jewish and Muslim neighbors came together to support each other in these difficult times, and that's the message as we've talked with the leaders in our synagogues here. We can do this. We can show the right way to do this, and we love our Palestinian neighbors, and we're grateful that they're here.
Governor, going back to mental health, social media is obviously a major issue, but how else are you addressing mental health? Yeah, thank you. We've had more investment in mental health over the past couple years than at any time in our state's history. And the social media piece is just one small piece of that. I'm very excited about the receiving centers that are coming online. The legislature's made a major investment over the past few years in these new receiving centers. We recently opened one in Hurricane City. There are more happening all over the state. These I call these urgent care facilities for mental health. So just like if your child wakes up in the middle of the night with a fever, you don't want to take them to the emergency room, but the doctor's office isn't open, so you take them to an urgent care facility. It's open 24 hours a day. That's what these receiving centers are. It's a place where people can go, get immediate treatment, can help with trauma that they're experiencing at that time. We've also greatly increased and will continue to increase what we call our mobile crisis outreach teams. Instead of historically, if someone was having some sort of a mental health episode, and they were in crisis, you would call 911, and an ambulance and a fire truck and a police officer would come, which usually made the situation worse. Now, when you call 911, these MCOT teams in a nondescript van, a couple therapists can come and actually help diagnose what's happening and treat the person and get them back on their feet, whatever it is they need. And so those are some of the major investments that we've passed over the past couple of years. And again, you'll see more coming this next legislative session as we're trying to work to get more state hospital beds for those who are experiencing some of the most acute mental health episodes, and helping them to get off of the streets where they're a danger to themselves and to the rest of the community.
Governor, earlier this week you had a meeting with Big League Utah. Is there any updates you would like to share with us regarding the efforts to attract a Major League Baseball team to Salt Lake City? Yeah, so the only updates are that those efforts continue, and they continue in earnest. We're grateful for the leadership at Big League Utah, the Miller family, and everybody that is associated with that. As I think most of you know, Major League Baseball has said publicly that there were two kind of dominoes that needed to fall before they could look at expansion. One of those was the relocation of the A's franchise, and then getting a stadium deal for Tampa Bay. So the announcement of the A's moving to Las Vegas was taken care of a couple months ago, and then just a few weeks ago, we had the announcement that Tampa Bay had secured a stadium deal in St. Petersburg. So that was very exciting, and that was kind of the purpose of getting the update from Big League Utah to talk about, okay, what are the next steps now as we move forward. We haven't been given a time frame right now from Major League Baseball. But we as was widely reported, and maybe some of you participated, there was a very big survey that the Utahns had an opportunity to fill out. We don't have all of the final details from that survey yet, but I do know that a lot of people participated, and we heard that there were big numbers as they're trying to process that data, which is great news. Can't wait to see and to publicly be able to find out what those what that research shows. For Utah, I feel pretty confident. Just anecdotally, everywhere I go, this is a question I get. People are so excited, and I suspect that they'll see what we've been sharing all along, and that is that Utah is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. Utah has one of the fastest growing economies in the nation. That Utah has a very young population that cares deeply about sport, and especially baseball. I think we are a state that will support Major League Baseball. We have a location in place. We have a potential
financial ownership group in place. All of those things put us far ahead of any other state right now. And so I would be very surprised if we are not in the top two when it comes time for Major League Baseball to look at expansion.
Speaking of surveys, what's the status of your growth survey that you've been asking Utahns to fill out?
Yeah. So we will be releasing, I think, some of that data pretty soon as we moved on to next steps. It was, again, another survey where we got great feedback. We heard from Utahns. I haven't seen all of the data yet, except to know that Utahns are very concerned about our growth and making sure that we grow the right way. That's probably not a surprise to any of you, and that people in rural Utah and people in urban Utah have some different ideas about what growth should look like. And so I know they're still compiling all of that information, and there will be an official report that I will eventually get, and we'll look forward to sharing that with the media as well.
Governor, total enrollment in Utah's public colleges and universities has also increased since last year, with 3 universities breaking previous enrollment records. What do you think this means for Utah as we continue to grow?
Well, it's great news, actually, because there are lots of states where they're seeing declining enrollment in higher ed. And I think what it means is that we have a great opportunity to keep costs low. I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing people come back. We put a tuition freeze in place last year. I think people are understanding the value of higher education, and I see immense value in that. It's an opportunity for us to we have a new state higher education board that has only been together. It's a smaller board now, and they've met a couple times already. I know they're very engaged in looking at the numbers but also looking at the outcomes. So it's one thing to enroll; it's another thing to actually graduate and get a certificate or a degree. That's where part of my concern is. I'm much more, not much more, but I'm more interested in graduation rates and certificate rates and degree rates than I am enrollment rates, because that disparity worries me. Because if you enroll, you spend money, you may go into debt. A lot of people do go into debt, and if you don't come out with a degree or a certificate on the other side, then you may be worse off. I mean, obviously better because you've met people and you've gotten a degree of education, but your economic prospects may not be any better, and now you might have debt. And so I think making sure that we're delivering a high quality education, an education that is aligned with opportunities, job opportunities, career opportunities, an education that is aligned with the gaps that we have right now. We know we need more in STEM fields. We know we need more in mental health fields. Are we making it possible for students to get into those areas where they are guaranteed to have a very high-paying job, they can buy a house, they can support a family, making sure that we're aligned there. So those are the things I'm really concerned about right now, as more and more families are reevaluating the value proposition of a degree.
Okay, we are close to out of time, so we will give you back a few minutes, and we thank you so much for being here.
Excellent. Thanks to everyone for your help today. It's a beautiful October. I hope you go out and enjoy the last few beautiful days of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm very hopeful that